Are you the greatest
No.
women's basketball player of
No.
all time?
Girl, bye.
No.
Respectfully, girl, bye.
No.
It's okay.
No. You know what? To be honest, I'm one of many.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm just serious.
That ain't what we believe, though.
Well, it's debatable.
There's a moment from the 2024 WNBA All-Star Weekend that tells you everything you need to know about where women's basketball has been and where it's going. Cheryl Miller, the woman many consider the greatest female basketball player who ever lived, standing on the sideline coaching Caitlin Clark, the college sensation who had just broken every scoring record in the book. In one video that went viral, you can see Clark looking at Miller with something close to reverence, and Miller looking back with a mix of pride and understanding. But this wasn't their first meeting. These two had crossed paths before, and when they did, Miller gave Clark advice that had nothing to do with shooting techniques or defensive schemes. She told her something that only someone who had carried the weight of being the face of women's basketball could understand. What did the player who dominated the 1980s tell the kid who's bringing women's basketball into millions of living rooms in 2024? And why did Miller's words hit Clark so hard that she later said Miller was finally someone who's on my side?
And he goes, no, he's like, Dean, how many points did you have? I said, Because I gotta make it work for the number. And he goes, what? I said, he said, did you say? I said 105.
For those who might not remember or weren't following basketball in the early 1980s, Cheryl Miller wasn't just good. She was the kind of dominant that made people reconsider what women could do on a basketball court. At USC from 1982 to 1986, Miller won 2 national championships, was named National Player of the Year 3 times, and finished her college career with 3,018 points and 1,534 rebounds. She could dunk in game situations, something almost unheard of in women's basketball at the time. In 1986, Sports Illustrated named her the best player in college basketball, male or female. Then there's Caitlin Clark, who came into Iowa in 2020 and proceeded to rewrite the record books. By the time she finished her college career in April 2024, Clark had become the all-time leading scorer in Division I basketball history, men's or women's, with 3,951 points. She averaged 31.6 points per game in her final season. More than that, she brought audiences.
Like I've said, when she gets to the WNBA, she's going to be surrounded by more talent. And I didn't know the quality of talent that she has on that particular roster. If that's all true and they're healthy, you're not going to be to throw the house at her. She's going to be to come off of screens and catch and shoot.
Iowa women's basketball games were drawing bigger television ratings than many NBA games. Her final championship game against South Carolina drew nearly 19 million viewers. These two players, separated by nearly 4 decades, represent different eras of the same journey. And when they came together, it mattered more than either of them probably expected. The first time Cheryl Miller and Caitlin Clark actually met wasn't on a basketball court. It was in 2023 at the Honda Award ceremony in Los Angeles. Clark had just won the Honda Cup, given to the best female collegiate athlete across all sports. She was coming off a junior season where she'd led Iowa to the national championship game, scored over 1,000 points, and essentially announced herself as a generational talent. Miller was there as part of the ceremony, and she made a point to seek Clark out.
She's not like your 6'6", 6'5", which gives her a height advantage, a length advantage. So it has to be here. It has to be here because I've never seen someone offensively rebound.
In an interview months later on the Breakthrough Chronicles podcast, Miller recalled that conversation. She said she told Clark one thing above everything else as she was heading into her senior year at Iowa. Have fun. No matter all the static, just make sure you find that quiet place. It seems like simple advice, obvious even, but Miller wasn't giving basketball tips. She was giving survival advice. Miller explained in that same interview why she said it. Heavy is the crown that she's wearing, and it wasn't something she anointed herself with. It's placed on her. Miller knew exactly what Clark was about to walk into during her senior season. The pressure, the expectations, the constant scrutiny, the feeling that you're not just playing for yourself or your team, but for the entire sport. Miller had lived it herself in the 1980s, and she'd watched it drain the joy out of parts of her career. She didn't want Clark to make the same mistake. When Cheryl Miller gave Clark that advice, she was speaking from hard-earned experience. Miller's career had ended far earlier than it should have. Chronic knee injuries forced her to retire from playing in the late 1980s, right around the time she was still at her peak.
That's what I'm talking about, because they know. They know. And we certainly have come a long way. And I'm not about gouging, but it's a long time overdue. And we're going to continue to get better and better. All you have to do is look at, college basketball.
She transitioned into coaching and broadcasting, watching from the sidelines as women's basketball tried to establish itself professionally. The WNBA was founded in April 1996 and began play in June 1997. That was 11 years after Miller graduated from USC. She never got to be the face of a professional league in America. She never got to play in front of sold-out arenas as a professional here at home. Never got to build a 10 or 15 season career in front of American fans. Never got to see her jersey sold in stores the way NBA players did. Miller played overseas and won a gold medal with Team USA at the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. But her window for professional basketball in the United States simply never opened. By the time it did, her playing days were over. She became the head coach of the Phoenix Mercury in 1997, the WNBA's inaugural season, and she had a successful run there, leading them to the finals in 1998. But it wasn't the same as playing. So when Miller looked at Caitlin Clark, she saw something she'd never had, a player with her level of talent getting to experience what she never did.
Depending on who you ask, it's debatable, but I've been fortunate to play with great coaches, great players, and be in the right spot at the right time, period.
So I can't believe you just did that to me, though. You didn't just say, yeah, I'm her, period.
I can't.
Clark was getting to play professionally in America, in front of massive crowds, with endorsement deals worth millions, appearing on national television broadcasts that actually drew audiences. Miller's generation built the foundation, but they never got to live in the house. That's why Miller's advice wasn't about basketball. The basketball was the easy part for someone like Clark. Miller knew that. What Miller was trying to protect was the joy, the love of the game that makes you want to play in the first place. She'd seen that joy get buried under pressure and expectations, and she wanted Clark to guard it carefully. The next time Miller and Clark came together was in July 2024 at the WNBA All-Star Weekend in Phoenix. Miller had been selected to coach Team WNBA against Team USA in the exhibition game before the Olympics, and Clark was one of her players. For Clark, who had just finished a difficult first month in the WNBA, it was a meaningful moment. The Indiana Fever had started the season with 5 straight losses. Clark was getting hit hard, literally and figuratively. She was being fouled aggressively on the court, and she was being criticized constantly in the media. Some of it was legitimate basketball analysis. Some of it was jealousy or resentment from people who thought she was getting too much attention. Some of it was uglier than that, rooted in things that had nothing to do with basketball. When Clark saw Miller at the All-Star Weekend, she reportedly told her, "Oh man, finally someone who's on my side." Miller gave her a big hug and told her she was proud of her. It was a moment of connection between two people who understood something most others didn't: what it feels like to carry a sport on your shoulders when you're barely old enough to handle the weight. During the All-Star festivities, Miller spoke about Clark with genuine admiration. She talked about Clark's ability to make everyone around her better, her basketball IQ, her competitiveness. But she also talked about the pressure. She said publicly what she'd been trying to tell Clark privately, that the crown was heavy, that Clark hadn't asked for it, that it had been placed on her by a sport desperate for a star who could break through to the mainstream. Team WNBA ended up winning that All-Star game, with Clark contributing solidly. But the real story was watching Miller coach her, watching the legend guide the rising star through a moment that was about more than just basketball.
One of the best that's ever played the game, so I've known Cheryl for a little while now. I think her energy, that's what I love about her. Like, it's just contagious, and it's fun. Like, I called her coach and she was like, "I don't know about that yet. You'll have to see how I do during the game." So
There was one more significant moment between Miller and Clark that happened earlier, in May 2024. The Indiana Fever had lost their first 5 games of the season. The schedule had been brutal, the team was struggling to find chemistry, and Clark was adjusting to the physical play of the professional game. Then, on May 24th, the Fever beat the Los Angeles Sparks 78-73 for Clark's first WNBA victory. Miller was there. She made a point to find Clark after the game and congratulate her. In a later interview, Miller described what she told Clark in that moment. "Savor this. Use this as a formula, but keep being you. No matter what, keep being you." Keep being you. That phrase keeps coming up in Miller's interactions with Clark. It's the through line of everything Miller has tried to tell her. Don't let the pressure change who you are. Don't let the criticism make you play smaller. Don't let the weight of expectations steal the joy that made you great in the first place. Miller understood that getting that first win was about more than just breaking a losing streak. It was about Clark proving to herself that she belonged, that she could handle the transition, that the professional game wasn't going to break her. And Miller wanted to make sure Clark remembered what it felt like, so she could find her way back to it when things got hard again. The relationship between Miller and Clark represents something important in women's basketball. It's not just about one legend mentoring one rising star. It's about generational connection, about the passing down of hard-won wisdom, about older players who never got their full due, making sure the younger generation doesn't waste the opportunities they're being given. Miller has been remarkably generous in how she's talked about Clark publicly. She hasn't made it about herself, hasn't spent time dwelling on what she missed out on. Instead, she's celebrated what Clark is accomplishing and tried to help her navigate the parts of fame that have nothing to do with basketball talent. For Clark, having Miller's support seems to have meant a great deal. In interviews during All-Star Weekend, Clark talked about what an honor it was to be coached by Miller and Ann Myers, two legends who did so much to build the foundation of women's basketball. She called them people she looks up to and idolizes. The meeting between these two also highlights how much has changed in women's basketball between the 1980s and now. Miller played in an era when women's games barely got televised, when professional opportunities in America didn't exist, when being the best female basketball player in the country didn't come with financial security or mainstream recognition. Clark plays in an era where her games draw massive audiences, where she signed NIL deals worth millions in college, where she was the #1 pick in a professional draft and immediately became one of the faces of a growing league. But what hasn't changed is the pressure, the expectation that one player should carry the sport, the criticism that comes with being in the spotlight, the difficulty of staying grounded when everyone wants something from you. That's the part Miller understands, and that's why her advice to Clark mattered so much. The story of Cheryl Miller and Caitlin Clark isn't just about two great players meeting. It's about what gets passed down when one generation reaches back to help the next. Miller never got to play in the WNBA, never got to experience sustained professional success in America, never got to be the face of women's basketball at a time when the sport had real infrastructure behind it. But she's not bitter about it. Instead, she's making sure that Caitlin Clark, who gets to live the career Miller never had, doesn't lose herself in the process. Miller built part of the foundation. Clark is building the house. And in their moments together, you can see the respect flowing both ways, the understanding that both roles matter, that you can't have one without the other. What do you think the next generation of women's basketball players will learn from Caitlin Clark the way Clark has learned from Cheryl Miller? Let us know in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss our next look at women's basketball history.